What is up, guys? Humble Farmer Taiki here, and welcome to Farms of the Week, Thanksgiving edition. This Thanksgiving, make sure to thank all your local farmers, because without them, there's no food for us to eat. And without the on-chain DeFi farmers, there's no liquidity for you to dump your tokens on. So, like real life farmers, on-chain farmers, we're all basically the same, right? We have a bunch of capital, we put it at risk, right? We invest this capital into what we think makes sense, and maybe in a few months or a few years, we get compensated in the form of additional farm tokens or airdrops. So the first thing I do want to talk about is airdrop farming, and you can airdrop farm L2s, you can airdrop farm projects and whatnot. But there was a recent airdrop for Pyth, which is an oracle that's based on the Solana network. They're also used on Optimism apps, Arbitrum apps, other L1 apps, and if you've interacted with any applications that use Pyth as an oracle, you might be eligible. So I'll provide this link in the description below. You can go here, and then check if you're eligible and whatnot. Me personally, as a humble farmer, I only got a few thousand tokens. I didn't go that hard, right? I'm trying to be humble here, and right now Pyth is trading at 34 cents. Not bad. If you got 1,000 tokens, that's $340. We'll take that any day of the week, right? We can buy that or we can sell Pyth, buy turkey, buy farmer hats, right? Because it's not really farming season, but to prepare for farming season, maybe there are some Black Friday deals, or you can subscribe to HFA Premium. But I digress. Anyways, let's talk about farms of the week. I'm going to be focusing the farms on the Arbitrum ecosystem, just because they recently passed the short-term incentive program. So there's going to be 50 million units of ARB tokens that's going to be distributed to farmers, and sure, it's going to increase TVL. It's going to make the metrics look that much better. I'm neutral when it comes to the ARB token. So if I were farming this, maybe I'll sell half, and keep the other half. Or if you really want to, be a humble farmer, you can, let's say you get 100 ARB tokens, maybe it makes sense for you to sell half of it into USDC and then provide liquidity and, refarm, right? It's like, there's restaking and there's refarming, right? I'm all about the refarming. And you can, do a bunch of refarming on applications like Pendle. So I talked about Pendle in last week's video, and they've just started to, pay out the ARB tokens that they got. And not gonna lie, so I've been tracking Pendle since 2021, and not gonna lie, I really think it went to zero. And it kind of went to zero. But then at the beginning of the year, they were really able to capitalize off the liquid staking derivative narrative, so the LSD narrative, and now they're listing more assets like LP tokens and also RWAs. And when it comes to most farm tokens, I think it makes sense for you to dump them. But you can also make an argument that Pendle is a category leader in the yield trading space, and maybe it makes sense to farm and accumulate these tokens. But at the end of the day, it's up to you, right? If you're a farmer, you farm potatoes, are going to keep all your potatoes? Probably not. There's, that's a lot of potatoes. Maybe it makes sense for you to just dump him, most of them, and then keep him for a moon bag, right? And maybe grow some more potatoes. And going back to Pendle here, what you can do is you can provide liquidity for all these types of assets. For example, GLP. So GLP, I'm sure you all know what it is. You can provide liquidity for the platform GMX, and then you can be paid, trading fees and whatnot. And if traders lose money, you also make some money. And right now, you can provide liquidity, so you can allow people to trade the yield on the Pendle application, and then Pendle will incentivize you with some Pendle tokens and also additional ARB tokens. Ever since they dropped this program, we saw that TVL has increased quite significantly, and I'm sure this is going to be the case for most other Arbitrum projects. Just because TVL went up, I don't think that's per se, not all projects are made equal. But if a random project sees a 2x in TVL because of these incentives, does that really make the token more valuable? Probably not, because once these incentives run out, TVL is probably going to leave anyways. So I wouldn't, get too crazy when it comes to Arbitrum ecosystem tokens. But Pendle, I think, is pretty good. 48% in GLP, I think, is pretty decent. And I saw, I had this up here, but Pendle has this has VE Pendle, right? It's similar to VE CRV, where if you lock up Pendle, you can vote for which pools receive Pendle incentives. And there are these two projects called PenPy and Equilibria. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not even sure if it makes sense to have tokens, or I'm not even sure if there even needs to be a VE Pendle aggregator. But hey, devs are devs. They're gonna do whatever they want. It's permissionless. And PenPy, you can go to the application here, and you can go to the Arbitrum page, and then, for example, let's look at GLP. It's paying 35%, 0.6% in the PMP token, right? PP token, some in swap fees, some in Pendle incentives, some GLP yields and whatnot, and 5% in Arbitrum incentives. You can do the same for, this is Equilibria, 37%. It pays some in Pendle, some in its own native token. I mean, it's pretty good, right? I mean, you could do a lot worse than this for sure. And, you know, I mean, we were talking about things we're thankful for. In the past 12, 18 months, yields were really, really sad, right? I mean, yield farmers, like, you know, I kind of had to, you know, retire as a farmer. But now that yields are back, right? We are so back. I have reintroduced the rake and the farmer hat. And, you know, therefore I am euphoric. You know, I mean, that doesn't make sense, right? It's like paying 35%. You go to Pendle, it's paying 48%. So like, does it really make sense? But, you know, maybe more TVO flows to these pools. And then at some point, maybe they're going to be in equilibrium. And it's not just GLP, there's other RBUSDC pools, MUXLP, HLP. So let's talk about some of these pools. So MUXLP, I talked about this before, but I believe they received they received 6 million tokens of the ARB tokens, and they'll be using this to give trader rebates. So if I long Arbitrum on leverage and I get liquidated, which I usually get liquidated, and I pay $50 in trading fees, well, the platform itself will give me $50 in ARB tokens. And it's good because, I mean, traders are still paying fees, but the Arbitrum DAO is subsidizing all these traders. And similar to GLP, you can provide liquidity for MUXLP and be paid 41%, 36% in the form of ETH, and 5% paid in MUX. And MUX is a token that you can invest for 12 months, and then you can convert it into MCV, which is their native token. So, I mean, yeah, it makes sense, right? You're not really receiving Arbitrum tokens as a form of yield, but indirectly you're receiving them because it might encourage more and more traders to trade on MUXLP, and more traders mean more fees, and then, you know, the MUXLP yield will be much higher. MUXLP is similar to GLP, where it's going to be roughly 50% in stablecoins. So, you know, you go down here, yeah, it's like 22% Tether, 20% USDC.E, 4% native USDC, DAI, USD. So it's like roughly 50%, and then the other 50% is going to be in volatile tokens, 2% BNB, 0.7% OP, 2%-ish Avalanche, 2%-ish Arbitrum, and then mostly majors and ETH. And I talked a lot about LP tokens as a humble farmer's way of having exposure to the markets. So obviously crypto prices are up, maybe they're dumping recently, but, you know, if you want exposure to the markets, but you want to protect some downside volatility, it makes sense to maybe, you know, purchase positions of MUXLP, because, you know, if the market pumps, yes, you will underperform Ether and Bitcoin, you know, or like relatively, like if you held $100 in Ether, you know, you will underperform if you held $100 in MUXLP. But also, if the market dumps, then traders get liquidated, so the value of your MUXLP can remain relatively constant, and on top of that, you'll be receiving Ether rewards. The risk is that, well, if traders make a bunch of money, it does come out of MUXLP, and you're also taking on a bunch of bridging risk. So if I mean, I hope this doesn't happen, but let's say the Binance Smart Chain bridge gets exploited, then, you know, any assets that's lying on the BNB side could be compromised. So that's something to consider. But, you know, 41%, I mean, yeah, it's not risk-free, but if it was risk-free, then the yield will be much lower. So farmers were being compensated for the risk that we take by, you know, these yield. And, you know, I mean, that's how the market works. And obviously, I'm on the topic of, you know, things like MUXLP. So let's talk about GLP. GLP on Arbitrum pays 24%. That's really good. GLP is, I would say, is lower risk than MUXLP because, you know, there's less, I guess, like bridge risks and whatnot. But they recently dropped GMX V2. And this, like V2 has gone trouble getting adoption just because it's a new system. Maybe people feel a little bit antsy deploying money into a new system. But, you know, they've gotten like low 9 figures in TVL already. And they're also incentivizing you with additional ARB tokens. So in the Bitcoin market, you're being paid 12% in the base APR, which so in like the actual fees, and then 9% in the ARB token. I know people like Solana. I know people like Chainlink. Link USDC pools, Sol USDC pools, they pay 40%. That's pretty good. And then you could go further at the risk curve for Doge and whatnot, and, you know, you can be paid about like a lot more. So humble farms, I think these are pretty good. And I think, you know, these LP farms like MUXLP, GLP, PemPy, and even things like Camelot. So this is another DEX, somewhat of a fork of Solidly and Uniswap V2 and V3, but USDC Ether, right? This has incentives already. Now it's paying 124%, 90% in trading fees, and then 33.57% in Arbitrum tokens. And you can go down the list. RBUSDC pays 172. Stablecoin pools pay 9%. These are pretty good. Euro USDC pays 33%. I mean, that's pretty good. And then there's other casino tokens, DOPEX and whatnot, that might pay you a little bit more yield, right? And you can kind of go down the list here. So if you like providing liquidity, if you like being a liquidity provider, I think Arbitrum is literally the best place to go. You can just do DEX, right? Spot DEX LPing or perp DEX LPing, and there's nowhere else that I'd rather be. I talked about DOPEX. Let's talk about DOPEX. DOPEX, the options protocol. DOPEX stands for Decentralized Options Exchange, right? And they got some tokens, and they also introduced this concentrated liquidity AMM, and they're giving out tokens, Arbitrum tokens, retroactively, as long as you're providing liquidity plus or minus 2.5% from the current price. And it kind of looks like this. Not gonna lie, I looked into this, I read this. I can provide this in the description below as well. But one of the problems with these options exchanges is that, I'm a retail investor. I've been in the crypto space. I've been in the DeFi space, making videos around DeFi for over 3 years. And even I don't fully understand what the hell is going on here. And I really don't expect that many people to understand it either. It's really hard to think about, the risks of selling options because, in the traditional markets, it's these professional market makers, that provide liquidity. So it doesn't make sense for retail to do this. Maybe when it comes to options exchanges, it makes more sense for it to be a central limit order book. So you have professional market makers. But if you don't want to speculate, I think it could be interesting. Like the founder said, TZ Talk Chad, if you're providing liquidity plus or minus 2.5%, selling puts or calls, you'll be paid into Arbitrum token. You get some fees and also additional Arbitrum token rewards. And a similar thing is happening with PREMIA. So they're also doing an AMM for option DEXs. And I also don't really understand what the hell is going on here. Maybe I'm too dumb, but I think it takes time for these things to develop. So me personally, I'd rather LP for DEXs or perp DEXs, or spot DEXs and perp DEXs. Option DEXs, I think the risk is really high. I don't think people really understand the risks of the Greeks and what happens if you sell a call and things like that. And it's there are lots of pros and cons when it comes to this. But you can deposit capital into the vault. So I believe these vaults kind of simplify the experience for you. And you're also being paid Arbitrum tokens. For example, the WETH USDCE cash secured vault is paying 69% into Arbitrum token, and some paid in PREMIA, I believe. But step one, you deposit capital into the vault. Step two, the vault itself underwrites options, so it kind of simplifies the process. And then if the option expires worthless, then you get to keep the premium and whatnot. And you keep the it's similar to Mux LP, it's similar to GLP, except it's for options. Sorry if I botched the explanation. I'm sure the options community, with a population size of 4, is clenching its fists and talking about, you should know how this works. But honestly, I'm not that smart when it comes to these options. But that's going to be it for Farmers of the Week. I think it's pretty good. And most importantly, let's think about things we're thankful for. I'm thankful for, I'm not sure why it's not loaded. Okay, there you go. I'm thankful for the farmers, real life farmers that allow me to eat French fries and potato chips. Without them, I'd probably weigh less. And then also, I'm really, really thankful for the on-chain farmers, because without them, who else do we dump our tokens on? Okay, in fact, I'm sometimes one of those liquidity providers, and aka bag holders. But hopefully you enjoyed this week's edition of Farms of the Week, and I'll see you guys next week for other bountiful harvests. Maybe I'll expand to other ecosystems, not just Arbitrum, to keep things spicy. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next week. Bye-bye.